Welcome, everyone, to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Columbus, an inclusive religious community of people supporting each other in the search for truth and meaning. I'm John Mallory Land, your volunteer service leader for this week. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. It speaks to us of reason, tolerance, and freedom, and also of compassion, respect, and love. May its flame ever warm and illuminate our lives. We're sharing today's service in video format only, as we continue to do our part to help slow the spread of COVID-19. The current plan is to resume our in-person services with physical distancing and other safety measures on Sunday, September 6th. However, our board is consistently monitoring the conditions in our community and may adjust the timing of our reopening if necessary in order to comply with prevailing medical recommendations. Under the circumstances, a number of our recurring activities have been put on hold, but thankfully others continue in a modified format. Our Wednesday night discussion group meets every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. via Zoom video conference for lively conversation. Our lunch group, which traditionally has met at the Mandarin Cafe, is also presently convening through Zoom each Friday at 12:30 p.m. Please consider joining us for one or both of these weekly events. And for any of you who have been itching to write a novel, or maybe didn't even know you'd been itching to write a novel, you are in luck. A new group called the UUFC Novel Writing Group will hold an organizational meeting via Zoom video conference on Tuesday, August 11th, beginning at 5 p.m. Justin DeFelici-Antonio, assisted by Bill Harlan, will lead this discussion group, which will draw guidance and inspiration from Alan Watts' tome, The 90-Day Novel. Participation is free and open to everyone. Non-UUs are welcome. You can learn more about how to participate in any of these by visiting our website at uukolumbusga.org, or you may also send us an email to learn more at uufcga@gmail.org. Our pavilion is new and improved, thanks in large part to Lisa Pyburn's recent efforts, and it's actually useful in the time of COVID-19. The ceiling fans even work too. The pavilion is open for use by small groups following social distancing practices. Please email us for more information about how you can use the pavilion. Also, our August giveaway the plate recipient will be Maycor, a youth-oriented group working for energy equity in and around the Atlanta area. Gwen Rush talked to us about this group in our July 26th Sunday service. This month's giveaway the plate will be collected next Sunday, August 16th. You can also keep up with the latest developments within our UU community on our Facebook page or by joining our Facebook group. And if you have any announcements you'd like us to include in the service, please submit those to Brenda Stevens by noon on Thursdays. Now, let us once again affirm the 7 principles which sum up the core values that we as Unitarian Universalists support and promote. 1. The inherent worth and dignity of every person. 2. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. 3. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. 4. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. 5. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. 6. The goal of world community, with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. One of the ways we proclaim the vitality of our fellowship is through sharing personal joys and concerns. First, I'd like to light a candle for any unnamed concerns or misfortunes any among us may be currently dealing with. I'd like to light a candle for Ron Usry on the recent loss of his older brother. And I'd also like to light a candle for Michelle and Hal Majette's daughter and son-in-law and their 2 children, who are all currently quarantined in their home in North Carolina after testing positive for coronavirus. I'd like to light a candle for all others suffering with COVID-19 and for survivors of those who have lost their battle. I'd like to light a candle for all frontline caregivers and essential workers in this critical time. I'd like to light a candle for victims of the recent bad weather close to home and farther abroad. Finally, we'd like to light a candle for those peacefully struggling to bring about greater equity and for those responsible for keeping all of us safe. Our celebration of life toast, unique to this fellowship, carries no doctrinal symbolism. It's simply a warm tradition that we invite you to share with us. Let's lift our cups as I read the toast, and we'll all recite the last line together. We celebrate life with its beauty and its pain. We lift these cups in tribute to the achievements of human minds and hands, and in sensitivity to the frustrations of misfortune and heartache. Not fixing blame or credit for the outcome of chance, sensing the risk, savoring the joy, sharing it all, knowing of the certainty of death, and remembering the value of each moment. We drink our toast of celebration to this time, to the memory of our dearly departed, to the future, to each other, to the throbbing of the earth and sea and sky with life. Together, we drink this toast in celebration of life. This morning's offering will be given and received in the spirit of grateful fellowship. While we're all apart, there are 2 ways you may send in your offering. You can direct a check by mail to the UUFC at P.O. Box 698, Fortson, Georgia, 31808. Or from our website, you may navigate to PayPal, where you can use your free account to make a secure donation. If that second option is your choice, you may wish to include a few extra dollars to help cover PayPal's fee. While we attend to that, we'll be treated to an offertory selection played by Whittaker. Thanks so much for that, Whittaker. And now we have a reading by a member of our fellowship.
My name is Danielle Neale, and I would like to share with you a reading and a prayer by Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. I feel like I'm on a constant hunt for hope these days. I have to be. Every time I look at my phone or open my laptop, I'm overwhelmed by stories of violence, disrespect for life, greed, and selfishness. When I listen to my friends and loved ones or to conversations in a coffee shop, it feels like everyone is dispirited and disheartened, and that is dangerous. The danger of hopelessness is a double danger. First, hopelessness makes us feel it's useless to take action. It fools us into believing there's nothing we can do or that our efforts won't make a difference. Once we abandon hope, there's no stopping the momentum of the unscrupulous who are willing to cooperate with evil in order to get ahead. The other danger of hopelessness is that we can lose each other. In times of hopelessness, it's easy to get scared of everything and everyone. It's easy to start believing that our neighbor is the problem and that hoarding is a better strategy than generosity. The problem is that when a community starts to break down, we lose the most important source of hope we have, each other. The message of hope that still blazes bright for me in these hard times is that I am not alone. I don't have to face the world alone, and I don't have to fix the world alone. When I need hope, I find it on the faces of my people. I find it in their hearts. When we find each other again and stop hiding out, thinking we are the only one. I find it when we come together in community to sing, to bless one another, to mourn, to strategize. All we need is hope, and for that, we have each other. Let us pray. Spirit of life and love, in these times when so much seems difficult, help us remember that we are not alone. We have each other. Help keep our connections strong and remind us that kindness, generosity, and trust are the antidotes to fear. Help us remember that our hope and our power grow when we are faithful to our deepest commitments and to each other. May we rise up and do the work of love again and again. Amen. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for that moving reading, Danielle. The title of my talk today is Aloe for the Soul. I don't have to tell any one of you that months into this pandemic, life for most of us, if not for all of us, is anything but what we've known as normal. While each person's experience is varied, we've all encountered some degrees of inconvenience, frustration, uncertainty, apprehension, fear, anxiety, stress, isolation, perhaps even despair or depression. As many of us have settled into new routines, for some of us, work or school has become more stressful, challenging, or risky. For others of us, we're out of work and find ourselves wondering how we're going to pay our bills and meet our responsibilities. Even those of us who are retired have had to modify our schedules, adjust how we go about things, and deal with the ramifications of staying at home or being socially distanced from friends and relatives. Layered on top of the disruptions caused by dealing with the pandemic and the attendant economic hardships, we also find ourselves in a polarized political atmosphere in the midst of a fraught election season. Add to this mix the recent and ongoing civil unrest surrounding demonstrations of protest in pursuit of greater racial equality, as well as the normal calamities brought about by adverse weather and the struggles of everyday life. These days, it can even be difficult just to stay informed on current events without becoming overwhelmed by the enormity of society's ills. Some of us are facing more daunting challenges than others, and some have better methods of coping or more developed systems of emotional support than others. Only a couple of months into the pandemic, reports of higher rates of mental and emotional difficulties began to surface, as well as increased rates of substance abuse and other addictive behaviors, as folks have sought to comfort or distract themselves from a widening circle of woes. It's no wonder, given what so many of us are facing, combined with the potential interruptions in access to services and the increased social distance or even isolation many of us are enduring. Recent video format Sunday services, including one by Joni Andrus on allowing our fear and anxiety to serve as teachers, and another by Erica Bloodworth on diffusing tension through mindfulness, have provided helpful guides for dealing with today's challenges. For those of us who may have relied on support such as group therapy or even one-on-one therapy, or if we should decide we may need something like this now, we're likely to find that these services have had to adapt to a new remote format to help everyone stay physically healthy. The websites for both the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, and the World Health Organization, or WHO, offer excellent guides to assessing mental and emotional health during the pandemic, and also provide links to valuable resources for those in distress. I highly recommend consulting these sources if you or someone you know may feel overwhelmed or at a loss. Part of the challenge of these times for many of us is the necessary separation from others, which can potentially lead to a sense of isolation or alienation. Anyone who is familiar with the 12-step program knows that two of the slogans are, "I need people," and "You are not alone." These two simple-sounding precepts go hand in hand, and for me sum up why we're here. What other purpose could we have than to relate and interact with other people, lending mutual support and encouragement? Without other people, what value does our existence really hold? And yet, we're living through a time that, to a great extent, is defined by separation from others, either by distance or by physical barriers. Many of the in-person communal activities we've long taken for granted, such as attending concerts and shows or sporting events with large crowds, have mostly been suspended. It may not always be apparent the role such events play in our sense of belonging and well-being, but the lack of these can certainly have a negative impact on our outlook and the communal interaction many of us have relied on for emotional support, perhaps without even realizing it. For instance, through attending UU services, meetings, and events together in person, or singing with others in a choir, these interactions have been transformed into significantly different experiences or have disappeared altogether. Technological substitutes for in-person human engagement partly make up for some of what we've lost, but they're far from perfect analogs. The physical contact of a handshake or a fist bump, the comfort of a hug, or acknowledgement through a pat on the back may seem trivial and dispensable, but for many of us, these interactions reassure us, provide a sense of encouragement or acceptance. Their absence can take a toll on our psyche. It may be that on a more superficial level, we simply miss these in-person activities. On a deeper level, though, the loss may be taking more of a toll on our emotional condition than we realize. Because many of us are living with vastly altered routines, it may not be readily apparent that things are amiss mentally or emotionally. We may be blind to the indications that we're not well or are headed downhill. And if we aren't interacting with others, there may be no one with an objective point of view who can spot warning signs in us. While making an effort to eat a healthy diet and to get adequate sleep and exercise are all critical in maintaining a balanced outlook, it's also important for us to strive to connect with others by whatever means we can safely do so. This may require learning new skills or adapting to technology that we're unfamiliar with. But as time goes on, it's become more evident that while this crisis is temporary, it will not be short-lived. Part of our anxiety and frustration may come from not knowing how much longer our lives will be disrupted or what other complications the course of this pandemic may have in store for us. This makes it all the more crucial that we seek out alternatives to in-person gathering. When we recognize that we're in need in some way, it's vital to reach out for help from others. Sometimes it's difficult to accept assistance because we don't want to be a burden or we feel we should always be self-sufficient. But we as human beings gain a benefit when we assist others. So when you allow someone to help you, you're providing an opportunity for that person to thrive as well. Within our UU community, there are many folks who individually and collectively desire to lend a helping hand or to guide others to finding the right resources to address their needs. There are a couple of fine examples of this within our own fellowship recently that are heralded on our website. One of the ways we connect with others and create closer bonds is through helping one another and through cultivating mentoring and shepherding relationships. In other instances, it's advisable that we make a conscious effort to shift focus away from ourselves and our own misfortunes and frustrations and concentrate instead on how we may help and serve others and the greater community. It seems that no matter how overwhelming our situation may appear, there are always others who have a worse plight. By looking for ways to make things better for our fellows, we can simultaneously improve our own lot. Given the many restrictions related to slowing the spread of COVID-19, it may be a challenge to find ways to participate in helping others in a safe manner, but there are many opportunities to be found if we search them out. Recognizing needs among those in the community around us is often a natural outgrowth of our striving to live according to the 7 principles that we as UUs have agreed to uphold and promote. This is all the more imperative during this period of upheaval. Our principles encourage us to consider and interact with others, even if we disagree with their point of view or we can't relate to their circumstances. The inherent worth and dignity of every person is how we should regard each individual, and this includes how we regard and treat ourselves. Each and every person deserves justice, equity, and compassion in how we relate to them personally, and achieving universal practice of these values requires us to advocate for such qualities in the way our government and our community treats everyone. Each of us deserves to treat ourselves with compassion as well. Acceptance of one another and of one another's views and beliefs is not always easy, but it is vitally important. And under the current circumstances, wherein we're physically distanced from one another, it might be harder to encourage one another in our community toward spiritual growth, but we must make the effort as far as present limitations will allow. Our free and responsible search for truth and meaning can be a singular and lonesome one, but it certainly doesn't have to be. Regarding the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, it may be most effective to think globally and act locally. Finding ways to safely engage and be active in efforts to make this aim a reality are perhaps more difficult during this time, but there are a wide range of groups and campaigns that continue to be active online. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part, can be supported through choices of how we live our lives in the physical world. These can be as simple as working to reduce how much energy we consume, or more diligently recycling, or perhaps collecting litter around the neighborhood, or sheltering a pet that's in need of a home. Also, it's important for our mental and emotional health to spend time in nature when that's possible. I recommend strolling through the beautiful meditation garden that Hal Majet has so lovingly created on our grounds, or exploring the footpath Hal has blazed through our woods and along our stretch of Heiferhorn Creek. The respite of communing with the natural world can do wonders to lift a burden from our minds and hearts, if only for an interval of time. I saved the fifth principle for last: the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. When we're feeling helpless about our lives and our world, it's important to do what we can to influence our destiny. This includes registering to vote, if we haven't already, and also verifying well ahead of the election that our voter registration status is still current. There are a number of websites that can help you register to vote or verify your registration in your state. Also, researching online or talking to others about how we can safely vote and about the candidates and issues will enable us to exercise our franchise and do our part to support our community. There is much about our lives we cannot control, but we are in charge of how we perceive the strife we endure and the obstacles in our path. Challenge leads to growth. Change leads to improvement. Loss presents an opportunity. The decision is ours. It is up to us to derive a positive lesson from each experience. Suffering is a thing we all have in common as human beings. It is our own experience of suffering that allows us to have empathy for others and prompts us to show them compassion. The phenomenon of suffering affords us the opportunity to help others and to accept help from others. It can create a bond of shared experience that will unite us if we allow it to. I'd like to end with a thought that was inspired by Rick Spradlin's recent talk on the theme of prayer. It brought to my mind a relatively universal prayer that is shared as a guide by many, even folks who hold only the most tenuous concept of a higher power. It seems perfectly in keeping with the tenets of Unitarian Universalism, and it's popularly known as the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Whether we're the praying sort or not, the philosophy encapsulated in this appeal is as sound an approach to dealing with whatever life throws at us as any I've heard. Thank you for listening. And now, we extinguish the flaming chalice here that it might grow gently in our hearts. May it light your path in these dark times. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Let us go in peace. And now, if you'll join me in our closing words, with unity of spirit, we go our ways in universal fellowship until we meet again. And Whittaker will play us out with a recessional hymn.